San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, cable cars, sourdough bread, and tech giants. Silicon Valley money flowed like the fog rolling over the bay. This was the city where dreams got funded, where startups became unicorns, and where a one-bedroom apartment cost more than a house pretty much anywhere else in America. But something has changed. The streets that once buzzed with ambition are quieter now. The office towers sit half empty, and the people, they are leaving fast. Between 2020 and 2023, San Francisco lost over 60,000 residents, one of the steepest population drops of any major American city. So what happened? What forces, what policies, what perfect storm of economics and culture tore apart the tech capital of the world? This is the story of San Francisco's exodus. Let's rewind a bit. San Francisco wasn't always the tech capital. For most of its history, it was a port city, a financial hub, and the beating heart of California's gold rush legacy. But in the 1960s and the 1970s, something started brewing down the peninsula in a sleepy stretch of orchards and small towns. They called it Silicon Valley. And by the 1990s, the dot-com boom had turned San Francisco into ground zero for the internet revolution. Startups exploded. Venture capital flooded in. And suddenly, San Francisco wasn't just a city. It was the city, the place where the future got built. By the first 2 decades of the 21st century, tech giants like Google, Facebook, Apple, and countless startups were printing money and hiring like crazy. Young, ambitious people from all over the world moved to the Bay Area chasing 6-figure salaries, stock options, and the chance to change the world, or at least disrupt an industry or two. The population soared, housing prices skyrocketed, and San Francisco became one of the most expensive cities on planet Earth. At its peak, the median home price in San Francisco hit over $1.5 million. A one-bedroom apartment could easily run you $3,000, $4,000, even $5,000 a month. And that's for something the size of a walk-in closet with a hot plate they generously called a kitchen. But here's the thing. People tolerated it. They paid the insane rent, crammed into tiny apartments, and dealt with the traffic, the crowded BART trains, and the occasional stepping over, well, let's just say urban realities, because the payoff was worth it. You were in the center of the universe. You were building the future, and your company stock options were going to make it all worthwhile. Or so the story went. Then 2020 happened, and everything changed. When COVID-19 hit, San Francisco went into lockdown hard. Offices closed. Restaurants shuttered. The streets emptied out almost overnight. Suddenly, many tech workers who had been crammed into expensive apartments realized something. They did not actually need to be in San Francisco anymore. Tech companies, scrambling to adapt, rolled out remote work policies. At first, it was supposed to be temporary. A few weeks, maybe a few months. Then everyone would come back to the office and life would return to normal. But it did not. Remote work stuck. Once people realized they could do their jobs from literally anywhere, they started asking themselves a very reasonable question. Why am I paying $4,000 a month to live in a 500 square foot apartment when I could live literally anywhere else? And so they left. In droves. Between 2020 and 2023, San Francisco's population dropped by more than 60,000 people. That's more than 7% of the city's total population. Just gone. Some moved to nearby suburbs. Some went to Texas, Nevada, Colorado, places with no state income tax and way more space. Some even left the country entirely, working remotely from Portugal or Mexico or Bali. The tech workers, the ones who had been the backbone of San Francisco's boom, were now the ones leading the exodus. But remote work was just the beginning. Even before the pandemic, San Francisco had some serious problems brewing under the surface. And once people started leaving, those problems became impossible to ignore. Let's talk about the cost of living. We already mentioned the insane housing prices, but it's not just housing. Everything in San Francisco is expensive. A burrito that costs $8 in most cities costs $15 in San Francisco. A beer at a bar, $10, $12, sometimes more. Parking? Good luck. Gas prices are among the highest in the nation. Groceries are through the roof. And don't even get me started on childcare. If you have kids in San Francisco, you are basically paying a second mortgage just for daycare. For a lot of people, especially young families, the math just stopped making sense. Why raise kids in a city where you are paying $5,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment when you could move to Austin or Denver or Raleigh and get a whole house with a yard for the same price? And then there's the crime and public safety issue. Now look, every major city has crime. That is not unique to San Francisco. But what happened in San Francisco felt different. Starting in 2014, California passed Proposition 47, which reclassified certain theft and drug offenses as misdemeanors instead of felonies. The idea was to reduce prison overcrowding and give people with minor offenses a second chance. A noble goal. But the unintended consequence was that shoplifting under $950 became basically a slap on the wrist, and people noticed. Videos started circulating online of people casually walking into stores, grabbing armfuls of merchandise, and walking right back out. No chase, no arrest, just a shrug from security, because what is the point? This was not just happening at big chain stores, local pharmacies, mom and pop shops. They were getting hit too. Walgreens alone closed 17 stores in San Francisco between 2019 and 2021, citing rampant theft. And when your local drugstore is closing because of shoplifting, that is not just a crime problem. That is a quality of life problem. Then there is the homelessness and drug crisis. San Francisco has always had a visible homeless population, but over the past decade, it has gotten worse, much worse. By 2022, San Francisco had over 7,700 people experiencing homelessness, one of the highest per capita rates in the country. And it is not just the numbers, it is the visibility. Open-air drug use became rampant in certain neighborhoods, especially in areas like the Tenderloin and parts of the Mission District. Sidewalks became impassable. Public spaces felt unsafe. And residents, especially those with families, started wondering if this was really the place they wanted to call home. Now here is where it gets complicated. San Francisco has always prided itself on being compassionate, on being a progressive city that takes care of its most vulnerable residents. And there is something admirable about that. But somewhere along the way, compassion turned into enablement. Instead of solving the problem, the city seemed to just manage it. More money got poured into homelessness services, over $1 billion a year at one point. But the problem kept getting worse. And residents started feeling like the city cared more about ideology than results. They wanted solutions, not slogans. And let us not forget the business environment. San Francisco has some of the highest taxes in the country. A gross receipts tax on businesses, a payroll tax, local income taxes on top of California's already steep state income tax. For big tech companies flush with cash, it was annoying but manageable. But for small businesses, for startups trying to get off the ground, for restaurants operating on razor-thin margins, it was crushing. And when you combine high taxes with high rents, high labor costs, and a regulatory environment that makes opening a business feel like navigating a bureaucratic labyrinth, a lot of businesses just said, you know what, it is not worth it. They moved to Oakland, They moved to Austin. They moved anywhere that was not San Francisco. And then the office buildings started emptying out. This is where it gets really interesting. San Francisco's downtown core was built for a different era, an era when people actually went to offices. The financial district, south of Market, all those gleaming skyscrapers, they were designed to house tens of thousands of workers every single day. But with remote work, those buildings are now sitting at maybe 50%, 60% occupancy on a good day. Some are way lower, and when office workers are not coming downtown, the whole ecosystem collapses. The coffee shops, the lunch spots, the dry cleaners, the bars that used to be packed on Friday afternoons, they are all struggling or closing, and the city's tax base is taking a massive hit. Commercial real estate values have plummeted, which means less property tax revenue. And with fewer people living and working in the city, there is less sales tax, less income tax, less everything. San Francisco is staring down a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit, and there is no easy way out. So where did everyone go? Well, a lot of tech workers moved to places like Austin, Texas, which has no state income tax, way lower cost of living, and a growing tech scene of its own. Miami became a hotspot too, with Mayor Francis Suarez literally tweeting at tech founders, inviting them to move there. Denver, Seattle, Portland, they all saw influxes of San Francisco refugees. And some people went even further, moving to places like Nashville, Boise, or Salt Lake City, smaller cities with better quality of life and way more space. And here's the kicker. A lot of these people still work for San Francisco companies. They are just doing it remotely from somewhere else. So San Francisco gets to keep the tax burden of supporting its infrastructure and services, but it is losing the residents who used to fund it all. Now, is San Francisco dead? No, not even close. It is still one of the most beautiful cities in America. The Golden Gate Bridge is not going anywhere. The culture, the food, the diversity, all of that is still there. And there are still plenty of people who love San Francisco and have no plans to leave. But the city is undeniably in crisis. The population is shrinking. The tax base is eroding. Downtown feels like a ghost town compared to what it used to be. And the problems that drove people away, the cost, the crime, the homelessness, they are not getting better. They are getting worse. So, what is the future? There are a few possibilities. First, San Francisco could adapt. City leaders could tackle the cost of living, reform regulations, and address public safety and homelessness in real, meaningful ways. They could make it easier and cheaper to build housing, which would help bring down rents. They could clean up the streets and make downtown feel vibrant again. But that requires political will. And frankly, San Francisco's politics have been more focused on virtue signaling than actual solutions for a long time. Second, the city could continue its slow decline. More people would leave. More businesses would close. The budget crisis would deepen. San Francisco could become a cautionary tale. A city that had it all and squandered it through bad policy and mismanagement. Third, and this is the optimistic take, San Francisco could reinvent itself. Remote work might create opportunities for a different kind of city, one that is less focused on being the tech capital and more focused on being a livable, beautiful place that people want to call home. The exodus might force the city to reckon with its problems and make real changes. Maybe, just maybe, San Francisco can find its way back. But one thing is for sure, the San Francisco of the 2010s, the city that was the undisputed king of tech, the place where everyone wanted to be, that San Francisco is gone. Whether what comes next is better or worse is still being written. If you found this deep dive into San Francisco's exodus interesting, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I put out new videos all the time covering urban trends, economic shifts, and the stories behind America's biggest cities. If you have thoughts on San Francisco, whether you left, whether you stayed, or whether you are thinking about moving there, drop them in the comments. I would love to hear your perspective. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.